The Rabbit Hole Chronicles, Episode 3, Atlantis and Lost Ancient Civilizations. (360 BCE). The philosopher Plato writes about an island empire larger than Libya and Asia together, with concentric rings of land and water, advanced technology, and a powerful navy. In a single day and night, earthquakes and floods swallow it whole. Atlantis vanishes beneath the waves. But here's the thing. Plato claims he didn't make this up. He says the respected statesman Solon heard it from Egyptian priests, who had records going back thousands of years. Ancient knowledge preserved in temple archives. Today, 57% of Americans believe in Atlantis or similar lost civilizations. That's up from 40% just 2 years ago. Netflix documentaries rack up millions of views. Amateur archaeologists comb satellite images for circular patterns, and every few months, someone claims they've finally found it. What if they're right? Welcome to the Rabbit Hole Chronicles. I'm your host Percival Blackwood, and today we're diving deep into the legend of Atlantis and the search for lost ancient civilizations. We'll explore what Plato really said, examine the stunning discoveries that keep challenging our timelines, and ask ourselves, in a world where we keep finding impossible cities, why is Atlantis so hard to believe? This episode is different from our usual investigations. With Roanoke, with the Philadelphia experiment, we had specific dates, documents, clear hoaxes to unravel. But Atlantis exists in that fascinating space between myth and possibility. Because here's what keeps me up at night. We keep finding lost civilizations. Real ones. Cities swallowed by jungles. Entire cultures erased from history. Societies so thoroughly forgotten that when we rediscovered them, archaeologists refused to believe they were real. So when someone says Atlantis, maybe we shouldn't roll our eyes. Maybe we should ask, what else have we missed? What Plato really said. Let's start with the source. And honestly, the more I dig into this, the more intrigued I get. Around 360 BCE, Plato writes 2 dialogues, the Timaeus and the Unfinished Critias. Now, most of Plato's dialogues are clearly philosophical exercises, but this one's different. He goes out of his way to insist this is actual history. He claims the story comes from Solon, one of the most respected figures in Greek history. Solon supposedly heard it from Egyptian priests at the Temple of Neith in Sais. And here's what's interesting. The priests essentially tell Solon that Greek knowledge is infantile compared to Egypt's ancient records. They say, and I'm quoting, "You Greeks are always children. You have no ancient traditions, no knowledge hoary with age." They claim that while Greek civilizations kept getting wiped out by catastrophes, Egypt preserved records going back thousands of years. According to these priests, 9,000 years before Solon's time, Athens defeated a mighty island empire located beyond the Pillars of Hercules. This empire, Atlantis, had concentric rings of land and water, hot and cold springs, walls covered in brass and tin, and a mysterious metal called orichalcum that glowed like fire. The level of detail is staggering. Exact measurements of the rings, the layout of the palace, the number of ships in their navy. 1,200. The organisation of their military districts. Either Plato had an incredible imagination or, well, here's where it gets complicated. Aristotle, Plato's student, reportedly said his teacher created Atlantis to illustrate philosophical points. But, and this is a big but, we don't have Aristotle's actual words on this. We have later writers claiming Aristotle said it. It's like a game of historical telephone. Plato says Egyptian priests said Solon said, and then centuries later, someone says Aristotle said Plato made it up. So what do we actually know for certain? Only that Plato's account is the first and only ancient source for Atlantis. No Egyptian records mention it. No other Greek writers before Plato discuss it. That's suspicious. But absence of evidence isn't necessarily evidence of absence, especially when we're talking about ancient history, where so much has been lost. The search that won't end. For over 1,000 years, Atlantis was mostly treated as philosophy. Then something changes. The Renaissance brings new discoveries, new continents, new possibilities, and suddenly Atlantis doesn't seem so impossible anymore. The modern hunt really explodes with Ignatius Donnelly's 1882 book, Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. Donnelly, a US congressman, proposes that all ancient civilizations descended from Atlantis. It's a bestseller that spawns a movement. And honestly, some of the places people have looked are fascinating. Santorini, Greece. Okay, this one made me reconsider everything. Around 1600 BCE, one of history's most massive volcanic eruptions obliterated the island of Thera, modern Santorini. When archaeologists excavated Akrotiri, they found something incredible. A sophisticated Bronze Age city, frozen in time. Multi-storey buildings with indoor plumbing. Elaborate frescoes showing a maritime civilization with advanced ships. A circular island that matches some of Plato's descriptions. The eruption was so massive it could have inspired catastrophe myths across the Mediterranean. Now skeptics point out, it's in the wrong ocean, it's thousands of years too recent, and Minoan civilization actually survived the eruption. All true. But what if Plato took a real catastrophe and moved it in time and space for his story? Writers do that all the time. The Bimini Road, Bahamas. This one's wild. In 1968, divers find what looks like a paved road underwater off Bimini. Huge rectangular blocks in perfect lines. The timing is incredible. Psychic Edgar Cayce had predicted Atlantis would rise again in 1968 or 1969. The official explanation: beach rock, natural limestone that forms in straight lines. And yeah, geological surveys support this. But standing underwater, looking at those massive blocks, I understand why people wonder. Nature creates some incredibly artificial-looking formations. Doñana National Park, Spain. This is where things get really interesting. Satellite imagery shows circular and rectangular patterns in the marshland. It's exactly where Plato said, beyond Gibraltar. There's evidence of ancient tsunamis. Even better, this might be connected to Tartessos, a real Bronze Age civilization mentioned by Greek and Roman sources that completely vanished. They had sophisticated metallurgy, traded with Phoenicians, and then nothing. A real lost civilization in the right place at roughly the right time. Archaeologist Richard Freund has found evidence of circular structures and what might be canals. The Spanish government is taking it seriously enough to fund extensive research. Could Tartessos have inspired Plato's tale? The jury's still out, but this is actual archaeology, not wishful thinking. The Eye of the Sahara, Mauritania. When I first saw the Rishat structure from space, I got goosebumps. It's a massive circular formation with concentric rings, just like Plato described. The measurements are eerily close to his specifications. Geologists insist it's natural erosion. And yeah, it's in the middle of the desert, nowhere near water. But here's what bugs me. During the African humid period, ending around 5,000 years ago, the Sahara was green. Rivers flowed where sand dunes are now. What if the geography was completely different? I'm not saying it's Atlantis, But dismissing it because it's not underwater today seems short-sighted when we know how dramatically landscapes can change. When Netflix changed everything. Then came 2022, and everything changed. Netflix releases Ancient Apocalypse with Graham Hancock, and suddenly everyone's talking about lost civilizations again. Hancock's argument is compelling. We were wrong about human history before. We thought agriculture started 10,000 years ago. Then we found 11,600-year-old Göbekli Tepe. We thought the Amazon was pristine wilderness. Then LiDAR revealed massive ancient cities. Why couldn't we be wrong about a lost Ice Age civilization? The show explodes. 25 million viewing hours in the first week. Hancock's Joe Rogan episodes get 27 million views each, and the archaeological establishment goes into full crisis mode. The Society for American Archaeology writes angry letters. Archaeologists call it dangerous. Twitter wars erupt, and then comes the showdown, a 4.5-hour debate between Hancock and archaeologist Flint Dibble on Rogan. Watching that debate was fascinating. Hancock keeps saying, "Look, we've only excavated a tiny fraction of the Earth. Sea levels were 400 feet lower during the Ice Age. Any coastal civilizations would be underwater now. How can you be so certain nothing's there?" Dibble responds with the scientific method. We need evidence, not possibilities. But then Hancock shoots back with something that made me think. Every paradigm shift in archaeology started with someone the establishment called crazy. And he's not wrong. Troy was considered myth until Schliemann found it. The Maya were thought to be peaceful astronomers until we deciphered their writing and discovered they were warlike dynasties. Archaeologists insisted Vikings never reached America until Lons O. Meadows proved them wrong. I'm not saying Hancock is right about everything, but this visceral reaction from mainstream archaeology, it reminds me of how geologists reacted to continental drift theory. Sometimes the establishment defends outdated paradigms a bit too vigorously. The lost civilizations we keep finding. But here's what really bakes my noodle. While we're arguing about Atlantis, we keep finding actual lost civilizations. And honestly, they're more mind-blowing than anything Plato described. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. This discovery should have been front-page news everywhere. 11,600 years old. Massive stone pillars covered in intricate carvings. Built by hunter-gatherers before agriculture, before pottery, before the wheel. Do you understand how impossible that's supposed to be? Our entire model said, first farming, then settlements, then monuments. Göbekli Tepe reverses everything. These primitive hunter-gatherers organised massive construction projects that would challenge us today. Klaus Schmidt, the lead archaeologist, said something that haunts me. Göbekli Tepe is not the beginning, it's the end of something. The end of what? What came before that we haven't found yet? The Amazon revelations. We thought the Amazon was untouched wilderness. Then satellites and LiDAR started revealing the truth. Massive earthworks, cities connected by road networks, sophisticated water management systems. In Ecuador's Upano Valley alone, they found 6,000 earthen platforms dating back 2,500 years. Population estimates suggest 10,000 to 30,000 people in organised urban centres. In the pristine rainforest, one archaeologist told me, "We're having to rewrite everything we thought we knew about pre-Columbian America. If we missed entire civilizations in the Amazon, what else have we missed?" The Maya collapse. This one keeps me up at night. LiDAR surveys in Guatemala revealed 60,000 previously unknown Maya structures. We're talking about a civilization twice the size of medieval England. And then around 800 to 900 CE, they just left. At some sites, tools are abandoned mid-task, monuments half-carved, inscriptions that just stop mid-sentence. Like everyone walked away one day and never came back. We know about droughts, wars, environmental degradation. But that eerie abandonment, cities swallowed by jungle so completely that locals had no idea they were walking over ancient pyramids. If the Maya could vanish that thoroughly, who else might have? Heracleion, Egypt. This is the one that converted me from skeptic to questioner. Ancient historians like Herodotus described Heracleion as Egypt's main port. Helen of Troy supposedly visited. Major trade hub. Modern historians assumed it was mythical, a legend, made up. Then in 2000, marine archaeologist Frank Gaudio finds it underwater in Abu Qir Bay. Colossal statues, temple inscriptions, ships with cargo still in their holds. An entire city, exactly where ancient sources said it would be, dismissed as fantasy until we literally stumbled over it. If Heracleion could be real after being called myth for centuries, what else that we've dismissed might be waiting under the waves? The floods that shaped history. Here's something that stopped me cold. Over 300 cultures worldwide have flood myths. And not just floods, eerily similar floods. A warning from the gods, a chosen survivor builds a boat. Animals saved in pairs. The boat lands on a mountain. Birds sent to find land. A divine promise it won't happen again. From Noah to Gilgamesh to Deucalion to Manu, the same story structure across cultures that supposedly had no contact. That's weird, right? But here's what made my jaw drop. The world actually did flood. Between 15,000 and 5,000 years ago, sea levels rose 400 feet as ice sheets melted. That's not mythology. That's measurable fact. Doggerland, which connected Britain to Europe. Under the North Sea. Sunderland, which connected Indonesia to Asia. Half underwater. The Black Sea. Used to be a freshwater lake until Mediterranean waters burst through the Bosphorus. We're not talking about slow change. Meltwater Pulse 1. Around 14,600 years ago, raised sea levels 65 feet in just 500 years. In some places, catastrophic ice dam failures caused massive floods that reshaped continents in days. If you lived on the coast, you watched the world end. Your grandparents' land, underwater, sacred sites, swallowed, entire ways of life, erased. Is it so crazy to think these traumatic events became encoded in our myths, that when hundreds of cultures talk about a great flood, they're remembering something real? And if flood myths preserve ancient memories, what about Atlantis? Why we need to believe. The more I researched this episode, the more I realised something. The question isn't really whether Atlantis existed, it's why we so desperately want it to. 57% of Americans now believe in ancient advanced civilizations. That number keeps rising. Why? Part of it is the genuine mysteries we keep uncovering. White Sands footprints push humans in the Americas back to 23,000 years ago, shattering previous timelines. Denisovan DNA shows unknown human species with advanced capabilities. Every year, our picture of the past gets more complex. But I think it goes deeper. Atlantis represents the ultimate what if. What if there was a golden age? What if we've fallen from previous heights? What if our ancestors knew things we've forgotten? In an age of climate change and rising seas, a story about an advanced civilization destroyed by hubris and floods feels less like fantasy and more like prophecy. We look at our world and wonder, are we repeating ancient mistakes? There's also something deeply appealing about the idea that amateurs might discover what experts missed, that satellite images or scuba divers could rewrite history. In an era when trust in institutions is collapsing, alternative history offers hope that truth isn't monopolised by authorities. Plus, and I'll admit this, it makes the world magical again. The idea that great mysteries still exist, that everything we know might be incomplete, that's intoxicating. What if? So where does this leave us? Plato's Atlantis, as he described it? The evidence just isn't there. No artefacts, no ruins, no records, except his own. The skeptics have strong arguments. But we've been wrong before, spectacularly wrong. We've dismissed real cities as myths. We've missed entire civilizations. We've had to rewrite textbooks again and again as new discoveries shatter old certainties. Maybe Atlantis itself is fiction, but the idea behind it, that advanced civilizations rose and fell before recorded history, becomes more plausible every year. When we find 11,600-year-old monuments and underwater cities, the gap between myth and reality shrinks. Here's what I think. Whether or not Plato was recording history, he was capturing a truth. Civilizations do rise and fall. Knowledge is lost and found. The sea swallows cities. What seems impossible to one generation becomes obvious to the next. Maybe the real Atlantis isn't a place, but a pattern. A reminder that our ancestors were more capable than we assumed, that our planet's history is stranger than we imagined, that there are still mysteries waiting in the depths. And honestly, I hope we never find Atlantis, because the search, that beautiful, impossible, endlessly hopeful search, might be more valuable than any sunken city. So what's my verdict on Atlantis? I don't know, and that's the most honest answer I can give. The skeptics make good points. The believers raise valid questions. The evidence is tantalizing but incomplete. We're left in that uncomfortable space between dismissal and acceptance, between myth and possibility. But maybe that's exactly where we should be. Comfortable with uncertainty. Open to revision. Ready to be surprised. Because if I've learned anything researching this episode, it's that the past is far stranger than our textbooks suggest. We're still discovering it, still interpreting it, still arguing about what's possible. Atlantis might be fiction, or it might be waiting, patient and drowned, for someone to believe in it enough to look in the right place. Either way, the search continues, and I'll be watching. Next time on the Rabbit Hole Chronicles, we're looking up instead of down. UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them, they're real, and the government finally admits it. From Roswell to the Pentagon's recent revelations, from Project Blue Book to whistleblower testimonies before Congress. What are Navy pilots really seeing? Why did the government spend decades denying what they're now confirming? And if they lied about UFOs for 70 years, what else are they hiding? Until then, keep questioning, keep searching. And remember, today's impossible discovery is tomorrow's textbook fact. The Rabbit Hole Chronicles is an independent production. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And hey, if you think you found something the experts missed, we'd love to hear about it. Some of history's greatest discoveries started with someone saying, "That looks weird."